Okay, so hello everybody, welcome. We're going to talk a little bit about stress and how it presents itself in the body, and then also recognizing some symptoms of burnout and maybe some ways to prevent it. So with that, we will go ahead and get started. All right, so first I always like to start off with a couple of rules, right? So one, don't sweat the small stuff. Two, it's all small stuff. And three, if you can't fight or flee, then flow. So I'm going to talk about that for just a second. There's a book called Don't Sweat the Small Stuff, It's All Small Stuff, which I just love, because in the grand scheme of things, even though at the time the stressful experience seems overwhelming and something you can't handle, in the grand scheme of things, looking back, you've gotten through most of your stressful events, I'm sure. So the idea here is to, try to think about stress as a moment in time, and that we tend to be able to get through things. And the better we care for ourselves and the better support system we have, generally, the better we can manage it overall. But if you can't deal with it right away, then we have to learn how to fight or flee. And so there's this whole concept called the fight or flight response, which is what we do when we are given a whole bunch of stress at one time. So we'll talk about that a little more. So in relationship to what stress is overall, my favorite definition, and there are many, but my favorite one is that stress is a reaction to a real or imagined situation which provides protection from possible danger. So I'm going to kind of break that up a little bit. One, it's important to understand that stress is not a tangible thing. It is a reaction to what we call stressors, or things that cause us stress. So knowing that, it's important to recognize that while we can't control everything that happens in our lives, we can control how we react to things. So I can give you a perfect example that I always think of when I'm talking about this, and that is in my earlier years, when maybe I wasn't managing my stress as well as I thought I should or could, and my children were smaller, and so life is a little more hectic when you have small kids and they need everything from you. I can remember my son being only about 5, and we were running late already, and I had a big important meeting at the job that I had at the time. And he was being silly and waving his arms around, and he spilled a whole glass of milk, and it went all over the floor, all over the stove, which if you have ever spilt milk or any liquid on a stove, you know how difficult it is to clean up. And then all over my clothes, of course. So I flipped out and I was like, "What are you doing?" And, I yelled at him a lot. And I look back at that sometimes, and I have since apologized to him. He, of course, doesn't remember, but I do. And I said, I recognize that at the time I was so overwhelmed with stress in my personal life that I allowed it to change my reaction to him with a simple mistake. He was 5 years old. And so it's one of those things where we have to recognize these things about ourselves and then hopefully make changes so that the people in our lives aren't affected by our stress the same way that we are. So it's a reaction to a real or imagined thing. So a real thing is the cup of spilled milk, right? An imagined thing might be something like, say every day when you wake up, you say hello to your spouse and you guys have a cup of coffee together or something like that. And then one morning you don't, for whatever reason. And you walk away from that situation saying, did I say something? Is he upset with me? Is she mad? Whatever. And you start to sort of think about all these things going on in your head. And the reality is that maybe that person didn't sleep as well the night before, or maybe they just, forgot or something like that. And so we've created this whole stress response in relationship to something we think is happening when it isn't actually the thing that's happening. So that's sort of the imagined situation. But all in all, stress is meant to protect us from danger. So if you think about humans 10,000 years ago or more, most of our stress, or all of our stress, really was related to things that we had to fight or flee from, right? They were things that were going to impact our ability to survive. So things like not enough food, not enough water, an environmental event, an animal attack, all sorts of things that could potentially cause us to die in one way or another, right? But you fast forward to today, and most of our stress, hopefully, isn't decreasing our ability to survive. And so the fight or flight response works great in survival mode because it gives you oxygen, it gives you breath, it gives you energy, it gives you endurance, it gives you increased focus. But all of those things only last for a short amount of time. And then our bodies like to go back to sort of being quote unquote normal. But if you fast forward to today, most of our stress is related to things that aren't survival in nature. Lost emails, not enough money to pay the bills, a leaky roof, whatever. And so our stress response turns on, but it doesn't necessarily help us deal with the stress that we're experiencing. And so what happens then is that we have chronic stress, and it goes on and on and on. We wake up, we have it, we go to bed, we have it. It's just always happening. And because of that, our body gets physically exhausted, and we get overwhelmed, and we have all these negative impacts from high levels of stress. And so that creates a feeling of what has been identified as burnout, right? And that's kind of what we're going to focus on today. But it's important to understand, for the most part, we create our own stress, right? If we put too many things on our calendar than we can handle, sometimes our employers put more things on us than we're capable of doing. Or, we have a sick family member that we have to take care of in addition to our jobs. And it's just kind of all of these things. And so we as individuals have to know what our limitations are, and also understand what the expectations are on us, and try to build boundaries that will allow the expectations to be met without causing an excessive amount of to-dos and tasks and things like that. I also like to define the differences between eustress and distress, because eustress is good forms of stress, right? And there's a lot of those things: getting a promotion, getting married, having a baby, heck, even winning the lottery, right? All of these things come with some level of stress, but for the most part, it's good stuff. And so it doesn't have sort of that negative health impact. Whereas distress is more the stress that people commonly refer to, which is the type of stress that comes with things that go wrong in our lives, right? Like a car accident, or a sickness, or an injury, or not enough money, or so on and so forth. Most of the time, those stressors are the ones that continue on, and they tend to impact our lives negatively.